You know, I've been Apple's defense lawyer for quite a while. When the new 10.5-inch iPad Pro came out, I was kind of expecting everyone to hate on it for saying that not that much has actually changed. Why didn't we get an Apple Pencil refresh? You know, we still got the home button in the same place. And let's be honest, there was a lot of rumors going around for this iPad that turned out not to be true at all. I'm not sure if it was just Apple experimenting in the R&D department and we were getting leaks of that and they decided not to go through with certain things. But back when I first heard the rumor about the 10.5-inch iPad, I did not care.
Guys, a 10.5-inch iPad? What? Okay, you know what? There's always...
I remember thinking, okay, if it's the same form factor of the 9.7-inch, and they are simply making bezels thinner, then this is great. It's just a nice little refresh. But if the iPad itself is actually a larger form factor, then I'm not interested. Turned out, it exactly was that. Not the same form factor at all, but it was also rumored that they were removing the home button, which of course got my imaginative brain thinking. I thought that the new iPad was going to be very similar to the iPhone edition coming out later. I thought maybe Apple had figured out how to embed Touch ID underneath the display. I designed those concepts. I talked all about the iPad Pro 2. I thought about, ooh, what if you had a glass back? So this iPad actually has wireless charging. And this is the Apple product that introduces that to the iOS lineup. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, since it is bigger, included a dual camera, just like the iPhone 7? Oh man, think of how premium of an iPad that would be. Of course, I wanted to see matte black brought over, even jet black. There was plenty of colors we've added to the iPhone that have not made it to the iPad. And yet, when this thing came out, a lot of those rumors and wishes didn't come true. Still aluminum, still the same 4 colors we had as before, nothing was added. No dual camera, no wireless charging, still a home button. And a lot of us thought that this next generation of iPad would include Taptic engines, or at least a pressure-sensitive display so that we could have 3D touch. Still no, we still have that regular old physical home button that you just click. You know, clicking the old-fashioned way. However, I've noticed in all the media outlets and all the YouTubers talking about this iPad, everyone kind of loves it. There's been mild complaints, but for the most part, nothing really major. You know, when a new iPhone comes out, the hate is unprecedented. iPhone 7, the only thing anyone wanted to talk about was the lack of headphone jack. No one wanted to talk about stereo speakers or dual camera or better processing, better waterproofing, the redesigned home button, all the added colors Apple was adding to this lineup. No one cares about all that. They only care about what is the one thing that's no longer there. That stupid old headphone jack. And maybe that's the reason we're not getting hate on the iPad yet. It of course still keeps the headphone jack. Why? However, I've been using this thing for a couple weeks now and I'm trying to figure out what did Apple do right with the 10.5-inch iPad to make people so excited about something that isn't really that different. So they improved the cameras on it, okay? We've got the same cameras on the iPhone 7, both on the front and back. 12 megapixel shooter, as well as a 7 megapixel front facing, which looks amazing. So that, of course, was a welcome improvement, but again, it's kind of overkill. Every YouTuber will say this as well, that photography and video on an iPad is kind of ridiculous. It hasn't been for me. I've used this for a lot of my cutaway shots and my tech videos, and I feel like I have a lot more control over the camera when I have a bigger amount of space to hold it from. So I've loved taking pictures with this. And of course, a major breakthrough with the processor department with the A10X chip, scoring record high scores on Geekbench. I've been incredibly impressed with it. Things don't lag. I've never had apps crash on me, and I throw a lot at this thing. Now that, of course, with iOS 11, there's so much multitasking capabilities, you'd think that iOS 11 would make iPads crash, but clearly not the newest one in the lineup. And it's personally made me wonder, like, if Apple is capable of designing their own in-house designed processor chips that can be this fast, why not put it in their MacBook lineup? The A10X chip outscores a lot of the lower-end MacBooks. You don't comment that there's no ARM support, that the chips aren't compatible. Look, I'm saying Apple could redesign the chip, still call it the A10X, but if you are capable of making chips that can perform this efficiently, then just design it similarly in your MacBooks. Don't rely on Intel. Why not, right? You got a bunch of Apple grammar Nazis. Leave me alone. But one thing history has told us about Apple products is that a lot of people feel like there really isn't a refresh unless the display actually changes. I think that was a big complaint when the iPhone 7 came out. Everyone said that it's just the iPhone 6 all over again, even though I thought in the refresh from the 6S to the 7, there were far more changes than many other iPhone lineups we've ever had. The problem was the changes weren't as noticeable. Since physically the display on the iPhone 7 looks the same as the 6 and 6S, no one really cared about it. So Apple's Apple's acknowledging this. That's why you're getting a display change on the iPhone edition. And you'll likely get a display change again with the iPhone 9 or 8 or whatever it's going to be called next year. So Apple's acknowledging this. And with this iPad, they knew they had to change things, but only slightly. So I, of course, am really loving the fact that it's a 10.5-inch display. Even if the form factor of the iPad is a little bit bigger, the bezels are thinner. The footprint itself of the iPad is a noticeable refresh. You can look at it and know that it's a 2017 iPad and not the same iPad we've had since 2013 with the iPad Air. We've kind of fallen into this trap with iPads where Apple finds a design they like and they keep it and they use it again and again and again, which, like I said, with iPhones, there are major changes despite those physical ones. But again, with the iPad, however, there's not that many physical changes and there's not that many actual internal changes as well, other than just getting a little faster. But what did the 10.5-inch iPad do that blew people away? Why are people so satisfied with it? Well, honestly, it's because Apple realized that users care about their displays getting better and that users recognize when a display is improved. And I think that's why Apple prioritized ProMotion. That is the number one positive thing you'll be hearing about this iPad, is the fact that they switched to a 120 hertz refresh rate, which of course is incredible, and it's impossible to convey over video. You really need to go to an Apple store, ask for a friend's version of it so that you can see how clean the display looks. Motion on it just gives you a glimpse of the future, and I really hope that with the 3 new iPhones coming out at the end of this year, they incorporate this ProMotion feature, as well as the True Tone display. It's not a new feature because they introduced it last year, but it's a new feature to me because I didn't have a True Tone display. I've grown to really like it. I've grown to appreciate that the displays I'm looking at are not necessarily this blue haze. Even though we get used to that pretty easily, I think that people are going to appreciate how comfortable this display is to look at, and that's what the iPad was really all about when Steve Jobs introduced it. Being the most personal, intimate device. Whereas a laptop kind of separates your controls from your display, the iPad merges all that together with incredible hardware and software. And I just think if we had a checkbox for all the things that Apple could do in an iPad, this one hits a lot. But like I said in the beginning of this video, there's still a lot they can do. There's still a lot to improve from. Because of course, the iPad lineup is still in decline. Apple sales for the iPad have been dropping, and I think in order to get people excited about iPads again, they have to do more than just the techie features of ProMotion. I think they need to do to the iPad lineup what Apple did to the iPhone 7 lineup. Diversify, provide some more options and some noticeable refreshes. The Apple Pencil's great, Apple, but could you provide it in a couple more colors so people actually get excited about, oh look, I can customize my iPad a little bit more. Also, the smart covers for Apple are very seasonal. They only release a certain amount every season, and they're not the greatest color lineup. I wish they would just let you buy any color from the spectrum, you know, red, blue, green, yellow. But instead they go with charcoal gray, midnight blue, soft dandelion yellow. Just smart covers is one thing, but keep in mind, the Apple Smart Keyboard only comes in charcoal gray, which I really think they should diversify that, especially when you're competing directly to the Microsoft Surface lineup. That is your primary competition, and they have lots of different kinds of keyboards that you can buy with that tablet, if you can really call it a tablet. And this one only has that one kind of boring grayish color for the keyboard. Diversify Apple a little bit. Let there be a product red smart keyboard. Let there be a dark blue so that it would match this channel really well. Then I would actually be interested in buying a smart keyboard. I'm not interested in buying one with this because the keyboard on the screen is fine. And come on, it's $160, people, for something that's already included on the display. Do you really want to pay that? Some people do, I guess, but I don't. If Apple really wants to get people excited for the iPad again to top the 10.5-inch iPad, I think that next year they want to make something a bit more like my concept for the iPad Pro 2 that resembles the iPhone edition, with an edge-to-edge display with one sized bezel all the way around, a glass back for wireless charging, lots of different color options, maybe switch to OLED, that would be neat, and of course, frickin' remove the headphone jack. The time has come, Apple. You need to stand and say no more. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm never gonna let that go. Don't expect me to get over that. I don't think I've plugged one thing into this headphone jack on my iPad, and I don't think I ever will. So those are all my thoughts on the 10.5-inch iPad. It's a great refresh, and I think it's what the iPad lineup needed, but there's still plenty further they can go with it. iOS 11 is going to help this iPad sell as well, with all of the new multitasking features they've added. And before I bought this, I wasn't using my iPad as much because it was so bulky and huge, and having my 15-inch MacBook Pro right next to me was a bit redundant, but this is a lot smaller, a lot more compact, and of course, it has some exclusives, like ProMotion, which I absolutely love. I stop using my iPhone a lot more now because I like to read, watch videos with that glorious frame rate on here, and I really hope they bring all of the features they've introduced on this iPad into the iPhone at the end of the year. here. Let me know all your thoughts on the 10.5-inch iPad in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.